22 years ago, when a bloody insurgency broke out in Kashmir, editor of region's leading Urdu newspaper was brutally shot dead in his office. A small group of frightened Kashmiri journalists then huddled in a dingy room of a newspaper office, smelling of stale cigarettes, started asking each other who next. The answer was violent and blood-soaked. Nearly 9 of them were killed and over a dozen wounded since then. Their offices were bombed, many of them were abducted, harassed and jailed. Their homes were raided. Militants and security forces always blamed each other for the attacks on Kashmiri journalists who walk on a razor edge and can't afford a mistake because they are reporting their own conflict.
If you are talking about the days of militancy, or when the militancy started, it was very, very difficult, and virtually every day was a struggle for journalists to report on or write, report from or write on Kashmir. But now the situation has changed for better, but it would be wrong to suggest that the problem is over. Problem is still there. You still have to be very careful.
Some of them were labelled as Pakistani sympathizers and others Indian agents. But still they pledged to bring light where there is darkness in Kashmir, truth where there is falsity, joy where there is sadness in the Mystic Valley. They have covered fires, gun battles, suicide bombings, rebel attacks, massacres, protests, mayhems, violent elections and disasters only. Now these days Kashmiri journalists have become the news. Every alternate week journalists are assaulted by police. Some in the very fraternity believe many of them rather now seem distracted. Either they are worried about their lives and intimidation and many also worked. Despite a significant fall in militancy, the echoes of violence near and far away still echo loudly in journalists' daily lives. While it is hard to grasp just how much it means to work for a media organization, if you're reporting from a region in conflict, it happens to be your own. The 2 decades-old conflict has taken a terrible toll, both on Kashmir and its journalists otherwise. Caught between warring factions, this fraternity faces a hellish situation simply for doing their jobs, and most of them suffer from fatigue, stress-related illnesses and feel worn out. Stress levels quickly rise as reporters and photojournalists realize that their assignment will not be easy whenever they go out to cover an incident mostly violent. On many occasions, journalists had to drop their cameras and take care of injured reporters, photographers, civilians and even security force personnel. The strain of seeing the impact of the news they report on loved ones, friends and neighbors, and the awful dilemma that stems from having to choose at times between being with your family and covering the story.